Hi, this is September 3rd, 1985, and my name is Susan Soderberg. I'm conducting a senior citizen interview with my grandma, Minda Johansen, and we'll just go right to you, Grandma. First of all, would you please give your complete name?
Minda Cosette Johansen, except it was Christensen to start with.
Okay. What is your present age?
95.
And I think it's apparent you are a female. Grandma, what was your educational level? What was the, well, just tell us about your educational level, because that's interesting.
Well, you see, we came from Norway, and I had an older sister who started school just a year ahead of me. And so throughout the years, I was gradually promoted a half grade until we wound up finishing 8th grade together and entering high school at the same time. Of course, I had learned from her some of the English language that I hadn't known at all previously. Then
well, did you drop out of high school, or was it?
No, I continued until the opportunity came to enter the Eau Claire County Normal School, I believe is what it was called to start with, because there was a shortage of country school teachers. And by taking part of their course, I was ready for teaching, which I did at the age of 17 years.
So you were in high school for 10th grade, and then you switched over like to this teaching program?
Yes, for about a year and a half. Yes.
And then what grades were you able to teach in a country school?
Well, any of the grades. They had all grades in most of them. Yes.
Through 8th grade?
The first year I taught school, I had children who couldn't speak one word of English. They were of German descent. And I also had twin daughters that belonged to the school clerk who had really completed their 8th grade work and were of great help with some of the younger children.
Like teaching aides?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And our children learned to read that first year.
Wow.
That's right. That we were quite proud of that. Well, I taught country school for 5 years. And then I decided I wanted to take a business course. So I completed the business course with the D.L. Hunt at the D.L. Hunt Business College in Eau Claire. And my first job there was with a men's clothing store. And I did everything else except take dictation, make change, and wrap packages, and a few things like that. And so when the family moved to Aberdeen, I moved with them.
Okay. Well, I'm going to back you up just a little bit. What's your nationality? Like, I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. And how many children did you have?
5.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
18.
And how many great-grandchildren do you have?
13, with a couple of more coming.
Okay. Now, to kind of, and this is really for my benefit in order to do the paper, but kind of in order of occurrence, and I'll name some things, and then if they occurred in your life, then you can elaborate on them. The first one I think did your birth. Do you want to tell us where you were born? And
Well, it was in the vicinity of Christiania, which is now Oslo, Norway, and the records were kept by the church, and we did not have the records until the German invasion. And just shortly before that, my mother had written and gotten our birth and baptism certificates, which is all on one form.
Okay. And how long did you stay in Norway?
I was there were 3 of us now. Let's see, Margaret must have been about 5, and I was 3, and Bertha maybe a year.
Okay.
Yes.
And you came over.
We came and landed in Boston, and then came on to the Wisconsin, where our grandparents were living.
Okay, and that was Karen and Knut Olsen.
Right.
S-O-N.
Right.
Okay. Do you remember anything at all about the boat trip?
Not a thing.
Okay. Do you remember Boston? Anything about Boston?
Not really, except what the folks told us. They had seen the bananas at a market and had never seen them before, and bought some and took them aboard the train with them, and when the little black spots appeared, they thought they were just overdone and threw them out.
So you went by train from Boston to Eau Claire.
Yes.
So you didn't go into New York Harbor and the Statue of Liberty and all that stuff. You guys came over to Boston.
No.
Did anybody meet your parents in Boston?
No.
They just found their own way to the railroad station.
That's right.
Wow. And they didn't speak English.
No.
And you didn't speak English either then. And
course
Aunt
not.
Margaret and Aunt Bertha was
not.
too little to talk, but
No, it was all Norwegian.
okay. And your grandparents, the Olsons, lived in Eau Claire, so you went to Eau Claire.
I didn't understand.
Your grandparents, Knut and Karen Olsen, lived in Eau Claire, and so that's why you went to Eau Claire. This would be Grandma Christensen's
Well, no,
parents.
they weren't living in Eau Claire.
Well, on a farm.
They were on a farm, yes, about 90 miles from Eau Claire.
How did you get from Eau Claire to the farm? Do you remember? Oh, you were too
You mean,
little.
how did we get from the farm to Eau Claire?
Well, where did the train take you from Boston?
I'm sure I can't, I guess I haven't thought about that. I can't tell you right
Okay.
now.
Well, it's not that important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, when you began school,
Yes,
you and Aunt Margaret,
yes.
where did you go? Where did you go to school? Were you living in Eau Claire, or
Yes, we were living right in Eau Claire, and the school was only 2 blocks from our home.
And what did Grandpa Christensen do to make a living?
He did woodworking
And carpentry and.
and carpenter work.
Okay. Did Grandma Christensen work?
No, not at that time.
At some time she did.
Oh, yes, she had to help out at times.
Oh, okay. So your first employment was as a school teacher, and then you worked in the men's store,
Yes.
but you didn't really get to utilize your education
Not
from
at
business
all.
school. And then, when did you?
Aberdeen, and worked for the home building and loan.
You came to Aberdeen?
Yes.
Why?
The family moved to Aberdeen. I came with them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why did the Christensens move to Aberdeen?
Because Margaret thought they could do better in Aberdeen than they were doing in Eau Claire,
Uh-huh.
and that there was better opportunity for some of the rest of us too.
You went all the way across Minnesota to Aberdeen, South Dakota for opportunity.
Yes.
Bypassed Minneapolis and everything. Wow. Aunt Margaret kind of was powerful.
Right.
I'll bet Aunt Margaret and Grandpa Christensen had some real good discussions.
They did. Many. Many of them.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you came to Aberdeen and you got a job at the home building and loan.
Yes. G.C. Gage and C.F. Easton and J.E. Gorder were all employed there. Yes. And
About what year was this?
that was, let's see, I left Eau Claire. I left Aberdeen in 1916. Went to Butte.
So it was before 1916.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see, you were born in 1890 and you came over about 1893.
Yes, it was.
And then did you complete school in Eau Claire? Yeah, you completed
Yes.
school in Eau Claire and,
Yes.
and taught there.
Mm-hmm.
You were 17, that would have been 1907. Taught for about, that would be 1912. You must have come to Aberdeen around 1912.
Could be. I'm not real sure.
Okay. But then and then you went to work for the home building and loan, and then you went to Butte, Montana in 1916?
Yes.
Why?
Because, once again, Margaret and Bertha were employed near Butte.
Uh-huh.
Bertha was a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
and Margaret was working in a, I've forgotten the name of a center there,
Uh-huh.
a little ways out of Butte.
Like a nursing home or community center or what?
No, it was just a sort of a recreation place.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, and they were quite sure that I could get a job there if I wanted it, and I applied, and I got a job right away with the W.A. Clark Mining Company,
Mm-hmm.
with the advantage of working there if I wanted to, because they were going to need someone
Uh-huh.
for a long time, or if anything else came along, I was free to move on. So I was offered the job of secretary to the manager of the Butte Water Company,
Mm.
and I stayed there for several years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I came back to Aberdeen in 1921.
Okay. What brought you back to Aberdeen?
I've been corresponding with a young man. I had not so young a young man. I had met in Aberdeen, and he decided to come out to Butte to see if I was ready to be married.
Well, you were a little past the usual marrying age, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
How old were you, Grandma?
31,
And how old was Grandpa?
42.
So you came back to Aberdeen and got married? Or
Yes.
did you get married
No.
on the way?
Came back to Aberdeen. I decided I didn't want to be married in Aberdeen.
Oh.
And Einar had friends in Minneapolis,
Uh-huh.
and he arranged for them to be our witnesses,
Uh-huh.
and we were married by their pastor at his home.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
In
that-
Minneapolis.
Yes, that was March 2nd, 1921.
Wow. So, did Grandma and Grandpa Christensen know that you were going to Minneapolis to get married?
No.
Aha, the plot thickens. So you eloped at 31.
You might call it that.
Okay. What, so you came, then after you were married, you came back to Aberdeen.
Yes.
And what was Grandpa Johansen, what was his occupation?
Well, he had come over earlier from Norway,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think he came right to Aberdeen, but eventually he came to Aberdeen. He had tried different things. In Norway, his family had a store,
Mm-hmm.
and of course he couldn't speak English, so he had to take whatever work was available. Most of that was working in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he met up with someone who wanted him to learn the plastering trade,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what he did the rest of his life.
When you guys first came back to Aberdeen after you were married, did you work? Or did you stay
No,
at home?
no. We had a family within a year,
Mm-hmm.
the start of the family, I should say, and 5 children were born to us
Mm-hmm.
in quick succession. And then after that, I became interested in the school work.
Mm-hmm.
I was president of the PTA, and I had a lot of that sort of experience. And eventually, they were in need of help at the auditor's office
Mm-hmm.
in Aberdeen, and I went to help for 2 weeks and stayed 10 years and following the death of the previous auditor,
Mm-hmm.
I was named auditor,
Uh-huh.
and I held that position until I was nearly 70 years old. And then they decided that it should be a man. They had had women auditors the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So
You gave that up.
that yes,
Kind of
That-
ended that.
right.
So you were about 60 when you went to help out at the auditor's office and wound up staying until you were almost 70.
That's right. And I was through in July and was 70 in August.
Your birthday is August 7th.
August 7th.
Okay. How long were you and Grandpa married?
About 34 years. We celebrated our 34th anniversary in the hospital. He'd been hospitalized then for a little bit.
Okay, and then he passed away in what year?
I became
50.
57.
Okay, I would have been 9.
I don't remember the real date now, right now.
Okay. And then, but Grandpa and Grandma Christensen were still alive.
Yes.
You said earlier, alluded to the fact earlier that Grandma Christensen worked outside of the home. What kinds of things did she do?
Well, she worked at a hotel for a period.
Mm-hmm.
My father broke his leg, and it was imperative that she work.
You know, by today's standards or norms, that's pretty liberated. To have, well, my great-grandma working outside of the home. Wow, it's going to blow this social class right out of the water.
Yeah.
Well,
after that, I became interested in, and had been interested in a number of things. I joined the League of Women Voters, and I was on the board for a part of the time. I was appointed to the what's their name?
Housing and Urban Development,
Yes,
that commission,
yes.
because we did that as such is defunct. Now they call it health.
No,
What did-
it's
yeah, that's right. Housing and
this
Urban
part.
Development is still.
That's right.
HEW is defunct. Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Okay.
And
Well, how old were you when you were appointed to that commission?
goodness, it was before I moved in here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I took the place of Dr. Moss, who couldn't complete his term. I think I must have had about 3 years of Dr. Moss's term. And then I had 5 years, and I reappointed for 5 years on my own. And by that time, and my first appointment was before anything had been planned, really.
And you moved in here like in 72,
Well, let's see.
73?
Going on 14, we're going on 14 years
Oh,
now.
okay. All right, that was 71.
Okay.
I just remember
Oh
bringing
yeah,
Raj up.
the first shovelful of dirt was turned over in 72.
In 72.
And we
okay.
moved in 73.
Okay,
This
yeah.
first wing was completed.
Because I remember when I brought Roger home the first time, you had just barely moved in here because I came
Yeah,
to see it.
they were making use of this room for tools that the crew needed.
Okay, so you were in your 80s and you were on a federal commission.
Yes,
And the primary focus of that commission was to build this the homestead.
housing development, right.
Sure, I remember the tour now because you pointed out the lovely table in the executive offices and how that table came to be.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to tell that story?
Yes.
Go ahead. Remember you were saying you had to wait you got the table, but you had to wait for the chairs
Oh.
because it was being built in Sioux Falls
Yes. I think that's right.
by the prisoners. Remember it was being built at the prison?
No, I don't
Okay.
recall.
Well, you told us that it was built by the prisoners,
Yeah.
and you had to wait until they got carpenters.
Oh,
I mean, someone might start the project, but then
Yeah.
might leave, and then you'd have to wait for some more carpenters to be convicted of a crime, so,
Yeah.
so that you could get the table and chairs up. Well, I remember because it cracked me up the way you told the story. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. You got married in 21, and you had 5 children.
Married at 31, you mean?
No, but in 1921.
Oh, okay.
And you had 5 children, and about at the end, about the time your youngest was 1 year old, the Depression hit.
Yes.
So what was it like raising 5 kids during the Depression?
It was a little bit difficult because work all of a sudden was not so, there was not so much of it, and we couldn't be assured of a steady income.
Mm-hmm.
But then everybody else was in the same boat, so we lived through that too.
Do you remember anything in particular about the Depression? Anything?
Oh, well, we had quite a time, you know. The Milwaukee Road was bringing soldiers through here day after day, and we were furnishing pheasant sandwiches.
During the Depression? Or during World War II?
This was during World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to the Depression for 1 second. Was there anything that you missed the most that you couldn't get during the Depression? Do you remember anything in particular? Of course, nobody had vehicles, so you didn't, that was no big deal.
No.
But,
I can't remember anything that was particularly difficult.
okay.
Seems to me like, was it sugar that was
Well, I was thinking that during the war.
one of the things?
Did they ration stuff during the Depression, or was that just the war?
Can't think that we were getting any rations.
Okay. Well, then, during World War II, because one of the things that I wanted to ask about was war activities. Now, you had 2 sons.
Yes.
Did, and of course, some of these questions, I know the answer, Grandma, but
Yeah.
did either of your sons participate in the war?
Yes. One in the Army and one in the Navy. The oldest son was over in Germany in the mop-up operations.
Oh,
Yes.
in World War II.
Yes.
Okay.
And the younger son was with the Navy, and he put in 2 different hitches, as they called it.
We did.
But I can't remember where the first one was.
And that was Uncle Paul.
And he was at Pearl Harbor when the news came there.
Uncle Paul was at Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor, sure.
Oh, wow.
We have a picture of them there. They were celebrating.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. And both came home from the war?
Both came home, none the worse.
Okay.
Well, yes,
what
Paul
kinds-
did have an accident on the way home. So that he was,
That was when he fell from one of the
Yes.
decks on the ship?
yes.
Okay. But it was
Otherwise, as far as the war was concerned.
not combat-related injury. What kinds of things did you do here in Aberdeen for the war effort?
Well, of course, like I say, the one big thing was feeding all the troops that went through here. And we had a pretty good supply of pheasants available, and people would bring, say, pheasants for the sandwiches that we made. We became quite well known for our pheasant sandwiches.
Okay. do you have any, or have you received any honors?
Well, the JCS were very helpful when our building was completed.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to come and do hair for people,
Mm-hmm.
for the women. And they really took a lot of interest in us.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the ones that decided I should be recognized as Aberdeen Mother of the Year, which I was at age 85. A little bit old for that honor, because now they are working more towards the younger
Mm-hmm.
people and families.
But that was in 1975.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. I mean, I was living in Minneapolis, but I remember I remember you being nominated and then receiving it for Aberdeen, and then when you went to Pierre, didn't the governor, was that Knight at that time? Who was governor in 75?
Well, somewhere along in there.
Didn't they make you a Goodwill ambassador?
Yes, yes, I have a scroll to that effect.
I don't know if you remember this, but I said, well, Grandma, how could anybody else but you win? And you said, well, honey, last year's Mother of the Year was from Aberdeen.
Oh.
So I know it won't be me this year because it couldn't be Aberdeen 2 years in a row. Okay. You have outlived 2 of your children.
Yes.
Let's just run through this now. Uncle Don,
No, Uncle Paul.
but Uncle Don is the oldest, right?
Yes.
And he must be really close to 65.
Yes, he is. 60. He was born in 23.
Oh, so Aunt Ann is the oldest.
Yes.
Okay. So she would be 65? Is she 65?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. She was born in
No,
22.
60,
No, she was born in 22.
22, so she'd be 63.
They're getting towards the 60 mark. Oh.
And Uncle Don is 62. And Aunt Jean will be,
She's not.
is she,
She's in the 50s yet.
okay. So Mom, this month, would have been 61.
Mm.
Yeah, she was born in 24. She would have been 61 this month.
Yeah, that's right.
And Uncle Paul was 50.
8?
That's what I was going to say, 58.
I think that's right.
Okay. Now Mom died of cancer, and Uncle Paul, he had cancer too, didn't he?
No,
He didn't have,
no.
not at all. Well, it was a liver problem, wasn't it?
Partly, yes. But not cancer.
Nothing. Okay.
No.
Okay. But you've survived, or all of your grandchildren have survived,
Yes.
and your great-grandchildren have survived.
Yes.
Okay. And Grandpa, or Grandma Christensen was, how old when she died?
87.
She was 87. And Grandpa Christensen was
96.
96. And Grandpa Johansen was, now I had to check that out for biology class. I mean, we were out to the cemetery and I picked all my relatives. 89, or not that old? 70,
I really can't tell you. His mother died shortly after we were married.
well, you were married in 21.
And I think the father was gone before that.
That would be 55. He must have died in 55 if you celebrated 34 years together.
I think it was closer. Grandpa
57,
Grandpa Chris.
57, because you were born in 54. No, and you remember Grandpa Johansen. Okay, well then maybe it was 57. Well, okay, in 57, Grandpa was 31 and 21. 42 and 21, he would have been 11 years older than you. He would have been born in 18.
What did I say? His age.
That's what that he was 11 years older than you when you got married.
Yeah. 12.
So
12 years older.
He was 12 years older. So, okay, he was born in 78, and he died in 57. What's that, 21 years difference? So he would have been about 79. So longevity kind of runs in the family.
Yeah.
You have one brother,
Yes.
and isn't that terrible? Uncle, what was his name, Brad?
Vic?
Vic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Vic. Okay. And Uncle Vic was over 80 when he died.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I do. Uh-uh.
I don't think so.
And Aunt Elma was in her 60s, about 66 or 67.
We should have looked these up, I guess, before
Yeah.
we.
Well, she died in 60.
Taking this down.
You can back up.
Yeah.
You can back up. We don't want to look like fools.
Oh, well, I don't think Dr. Rosati's going to watch it anyway because he knows me. Well, anyway.
Okay.
But Aunt Margaret was a couple of years older than you, and she just recently passed
She
away.
was just a year and a half older.
So longevity really runs in the family.
Yeah, she would have been 95.
That's right. Okay. Now, if this happened to you, could you describe how it happened or a little bit about it and how you felt about it then and how you feel about it now? Okay?
About what?
I'm going to name some things.
Oh,
And some of them might not apply.
okay.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Retirement or a reduction in income. Retirement, boy, when did you ever really exactly retire?
I retired, well, at 70.
At age 70 from the city auditor's office.
Yeah.
But you were still very active in things. I mean, like the last general election, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you at the polling booth? Didn't you work the last general, no, not, in 1980. 1980, didn't you work the polling booth because Ron took Chelsea down there and you were at Henry Neal?
Oh, I don't remember.
Well, I do because that just knocked her socks off.
Oh.
You always did, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. She was a lot like Aunt Alma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just so many aches and pains. You had to have a calendar to keep track of them all. And there you were, working at the general election. So although you weren't gainfully employed, you were still very active in
Oh,
things.
yes.
But you weren't ever independently wealthy,
No,
so you didn't ever really feel a loss of income.
no.
Okay. So that one doesn't well, how did you feel about retiring from the city auditor's office at that time?
Well, that was okay. It was getting more complicated
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And they thought they should have, this isn't going down, is it?
Well, that's okay. That business about having a man in there?
They should have a man as auditor. But he didn't last very long.
I was going to ask, do we have, because I don't even know, do we have a female city auditor? No?
As far as I know, I'm not sure there is a city auditor anymore.
There's
I
an
don't think
auditor's
there's a
office?
city treasurer anymore.
Huh.
They were gradually working into this and getting
Oh, Bruce Nelson, our finance officer.
finance.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Did you and Grandpa Joe experience changes in your marriage relationship? I mean, I'm not sure what that means, but
I don't think so.
you guys just kind of,
Took it as it came along.
okay. How did you feel when you were widowed at that time? How was that?
I was interested in enough things to keep me busy.
Because you've really been alone more of your life than you've been with somebody.
Well, 34 years, that's a pretty good stretch.
But there were
Oh, yeah.
61 years,
Yeah, I know.
so widowhood hasn't been a problem for you.
No, I can't see that it has.
How about your health? Now that's been pretty remarkable, hasn't it?
Yes, I must say, my health has been remarkable.
There's a story Mom told me once about one time you had a headache and somebody talked you into taking an aspirin
Yeah,
and you thought you were going to die and you said you'd never take another aspirin again.
yeah,
Is that true?
that's true.
Do you take any medication?
Very little, very, very little.
Is it regularly or just whenever?
No, all throughout my life.
Just haven't...
I didn't feel I required medicine.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There's one other story we just got to get recorded. I don't know if you remember this, and again, it was Mom telling me the story. But do you remember when there used to be a drugstore in the Citizens Building, and Aunt Margaret's doctor was upstairs? But there was in the front of the building was a drugstore, and they had a soda fountain there. This would have been in the 40s. I think it was a Citizens Building, maybe. There weren't ever any doctors housed in the Ward Hotel, were there? Because that's the only other building that's got a drugstore in the front. I'm sure it was a Citizens building, because I halfway remember there being a drugstore in the front of that when I was real little.
In front of the Ward Hotel?
No, in the Citizens building.
Or in the Citizens building? Oh, yeah. There was a store there.
Okay.
A drugstore. Mhm.
Well, Mom told me that one day she and a girlfriend went into that drugstore, and they went into a booth way in the back, thinking that no one would see them, to have a cigarette. And you happened to be taking Aunt Margaret to the doctor that day.
Oh.
And there were windows that faced in and out of the drugstore at the area where you take the elevator to go to the doctor's office, and you looked in and saw Mom smoking. But you didn't say anything. And then you took Aunt Margaret to the doctor, and then you went home, and she came home, and you confronted her. And you said, Margaret, you've been smoking. And Mom just couldn't figure out how you could know. And so instead of saying, well, yes, I have, she said, well, how do you know that? And you said, I can tell by your eyes. And she said she went, hurrying as soon as she could get away from you. She went hurrying into the bathroom to look in her eyes to see if there was any telltale sign. And that it was years later that you told her the truth, that you had seen her. And you don't remember that. Oh, she told me some wild stories.
Who told you this now?
Mom.
Oh.
Mom told me that.
Yeah.
She told me some wild stories about growing up in that house on 2nd and State. Okay, well, so your health throughout has been really good.
That's right.
You were hospitalized. Did you have all 5 children in the hospital?
Yes.
You did. And were all 5 of them born here?
Yes.
In Aberdeen. Okay. Then you were hospitalized in 64. Over Christmas of 64. For a personal surgery. I remember that because Dad and I went up to see you, but I had to leave the room when you talked about how you were doing.
Yeah.
And then you fell by the F&M Bank once, and you were in the hospital like overnight or 2 days.
2 days. Hurt my knee.
And that's about it.
That's about it, right.
That's phenomenal. How about religion? Have your religious views changed, or your philosophy?
No, I can't say that they really have. We had a wonderful minister and his wife in Eau Claire. I was confirmed in Eau Claire, in Norwegian, by the way. And they had no children. The Christmas hymns, and she was very patient with the children. One of the people I will never forget.
And she taught you in English.
Yes, right.
Or she taught you.
We still had Norwegian services there for quite a while.
When you learned to talk, this is going way back, but when you first learned how to talk, did you talk Norwegian?
Well, of
and
course.
then you
had to learn English.
Well, yeah, because you were 3.
Well, let's say that was the same with Einar. See, he didn't know any English when he came over here. That's why it was hard to find any work to do.
How about when your sisters, and Uncle Vic would have been born here too. The ones that were born over here in America, did they grow up speaking Norwegian because that's what your folks spoke?
Not really. No. the folks continued, and whenever a bunch of Norwegians got together, that's all they talked, of course.
Mhm.
But no, they were quite quick at learning, and even learning to write.
Mhm.
Yes, in the English. Little difficulty with spelling, which even our own people have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The next one is political changes. Have you experienced any political changes?
I have always favored the Republican side of the controversy, but I have not always voted straight Republican. I vote for the person I think is the best suited for the job. So I have on occasions. I know I remember voting for one Democratic president.
Oh, really?
Yes, I did. You know who it was? Carter.
I was going to say, was it
You
Carter?
know, he sounded pretty, and I think maybe if he'd had another term, he might have come out a little differently. They all have to learn a certain amount of things before they really get into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you didn't vote for Kennedy. You must have voted for, Stevenson? Who ran against Kennedy? No, Nixon. You voted for Richard M. Nixon back in 1960?
Darned if I know.
You must have.
I really don't know. I know that I voted for Carter.
Okay. And there's one young Democratic congressman that you've been known to vote for from South Dakota,
Yeah.
Tommy D.
Yes.
How about your activity? Well, wait a minute. Let's back up to political. How did you feel voting for a Democratic president when, even though you say you're a person voter, you don't
Yeah.
vote party, you vote person?
Right.
Was that kind of traumatic for you to be voting for a Democratic president after all those years?
No, I just felt that he might be the one that would do the job.
So it didn't tug at your conscience when you
I don't
pulled
think
the
so.
lever?
No.
Have you ever missed an election?
Not for, yeah, I think since I'm older here now, I think I have. Yes, it's an effort to get there, for one thing.
Okay.
And I'm getting to feel like the younger people should be doing it.
But you know, it's your generation that does the electing. It's your generation that does the electing. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
More people over the age of 65 vote than under the age of 30.
Well, there are more of us, for one thing. And it might be that that the older people have really studied it a little more than the younger ones.
Yeah, I think you're better informed.
Oh yes, I think we are too now. Yes. Yes. More and more so every day now.
Until not so very long ago, you got up every day and went to the senior center
Yes.
and participated in their chorus
Yes.
and a few of the other things that they're involved with.
We went to meetings outside and helped organize some senior citizens, yes.
And then,
In fact, we helped Groton get started.
The Groton Senior Center?
Yeah. And somebody said, well, how do you go about it anyway? And I said, what are you going to charge for membership? Well, $1 then. I said, okay. He said, give me your $1 and you're a member. I'll get your name right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. That very day that we were there.
Excuse me, recently though, you stopped going over there every day.
Yes, it's a little bit of too much of an effort.
How do you feel about that? Your activity level being
Well,
decreased.
can't really participate like I used to, for one thing. And I like to go and listen to their meetings and know what they're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I wasn't getting their paper that they put out once a month, where they had their menus and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked that they send one especially for me out here.
Mm-hmm.
They said, well, we send some out there. Once in a while I see one out on the desk, but I didn't figure it was for anyone special.
Uh-huh.
So now the Mary's going to bring me one. She goes by my door. She can push it under the door. Doesn't take, there's a good big crack in there. You can get quite a few things pushed under.
So how does it bother you to not be involved like you were, say, 5 years ago, to be as active?
No, I can't say that it does.
You're just content.
Put in my time for someone else to take over.
Would you please mention one or two things which you think would make life better for older people in this area?
Well, I don't know. It seems to me like we've got just about everything we need here. We have a wonderful director. We're very fortunate in having the director that we do have.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Aberdeen could use more residences like the homestead?
Yes, I think perhaps there was a time when they used to have a boarding house deal.
Mm-hmm.
Not particular for this, but where you could just have a room and then someplace where you could congregate.
Mm-hmm.
And your meals could be brought to you, or you could come and eat your meal at the,
Uh-huh.
big table. Yes, that would be an asset. When you get into the 80s and 90s especially, you don't want to do your own cooking, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nice to have food prepared for you.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, and of course now you can have meals delivered.
Mm-hmm.
We could have it out here if it weren't for one or two people that just don't want to be bothered with it, or be bothered with having other people come in here to eat, if you please. One or two people have just put the kibosh on that.
On Meals on Wheels?
Yeah. No, not Meals on Wheels.
But-
Bring in and serve. Now Fifth Avenue has it. Their meals are served right there.
Yeah, you have that big, lovely kitchen
Yeah.
in your commons area.
You don't need that because the food will be brought cooked.
Oh, it would.
All you have to do is the seating arrangement and
Uh-huh.
And as far as dishes, there's nothing to do really, except just see that people get there and help bring the food to their particular place if they can't carry it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're delivering meals like that in several places.
But you're unable to get that here because one or two people are against it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Grandma, what would you say are 2 or 3 of the greatest contributions to the world that your generation has made?
I didn't get to that one. Well, some things are contributions and some things aren't, that's for sure. Yes, we've made some. Social Security is one of the biggest ones there are, and we'd like to keep it that way. Okay, so now what is Roosevelt wanting? He wants them to...
Reagan. Reagan.
No, I'm talking about Roosevelt.
Roosevelt?
Yes. James Roosevelt. Is it
Abner.
James? Huh?
Abner.
No, not Abner. I'm talking about...
James Roosevelt? We've got another Roosevelt involved in politics?
He is working to see that Social Security is not changed from what his father proposed in the first place.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
See, you're better
I have
informed.
contributed to his little deal, but they are wanting to tax the ones that are getting $25,000. Well, those people paid in bigger amounts. Why should they be taxed then, just because they happen to be in a bigger bracket? He wants it left so that Congress doesn't have anything to do with it anymore. And that's the way it should be. Yep. What else? There's all sorts of things. I don't know whether the fact that everybody has a car is especially good.
Well, how about transportation in general?
Well, some of it's good and some isn't. The way these planes are coming down, I'm not so sure about that either. Now, what's causing all those?
Law of averages.
Carelessness or something, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of carelessness too. A lot of carelessness and a lot of law of averages. There's a hell of a lot of planes up there.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, we don't see too many of them around here.
No, few and far between.
But then there's all these train accidents too.
Now that sounds like carelessness.
Yeah, there's that one place in Colorado that once a month has a terrible train accident, and then that person is removed and never heard from again.
They pull another guy in from one of the box cars to
Yeah.
be the controller.
Well, thinking over your entire life so far, when would you say it was the happiest or best time of your life?
Would you believe it that I think a lot of people are saying that during the really hard times were the best because everybody thought about the next guy a little bit.
So that would have been...
During the Depression,
when your children were little and you were just
Yeah,
newly married and everything was tough and
that's right. You know, Ida was working for Frank Nelson. And Frank Nelson got all the big jobs. Well, then when things got a little tough, Ina worked for St. Luke's. Did all the repair work there.
Oh,
Every time he got his check, he would donate a little bit to the St. Luke's.
oh, to the nuns.
Not only that, but he did a better job. Then Frank wanted him to divide up that work with the rest of them.
Did he?
No, he didn't. They called him and that was it. I say, we never owned a car.
Mm-hmm.
He had his tools hauled by a fellow that had a motorcycle with a little side thing on it. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
What was his name?
Oh, no, I don't remember
No,
who it
that
was,
was before your time, I'm sure.
but I know what you mean, a little side.
Yeah, when he had a small job somewhere to do, his tools and even a small mortar box they could take along, you know, whatever he needed. And he, I don't think Ida particularly cared whether he had a car or not. First place, he didn't know anything about it, and I don't know if he was too interested. Roger and I were talking about it. I always said Einar would have been better if he'd stayed in Norway. His family had a business there. He tells about rowing across, there's an island out there, there's a big, I think it was a river, and they kept dynamite on that, frozen dynamite out there in that, on that island. And he'd row over and get some sticks of dynamite and put them inside his blouse, as he said, as kind of a jacket thing. So it would be partly thawed out by the time he got back to the store. Yeah.
If somebody came into the store and wanted to buy dynamite, then he'd go over and...
Go over and pick it up.
Well, Grandma...
Well, you see there's great big rock, like some of our places here.
If
Where they
Grandpa
had-
had stayed in Norway, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I said for him it would have been better.
Well, I just have one more question. If you had your life to live over again, what would you do differently?
I'm not sure I'd do much of anything very different.
Pretty satisfied.
It hasn't been that. Wherever I've been, I've enjoyed. We had lots of fun out in Butte, skating. They had a nice big park out there, and on Sunday they had a band out there and kept the ice up good and everything. And no.
Well, according to our statistics in...
I said when the kids were little, we had entertainment all the time. After we got that piano, you see, Margaret bought the piano for Jean to take lessons. And nobody had room for the piano. So it was hauled up to our house, was there the rest of the time. Of course, Jean's got it at home now. I don't think she plays it anymore. I wonder if she's ever had it tuned.
Is that the one that used to be in our garage on J Street?
When was that?
Do you remember it, Brian?
I'm sure that's not the same one. She's had that all along, right? Aunt Jean.
Hmm?
Aunt Jean has had that piano up at her house for...
Who had it?
Aunt Jean. I was asking if that was the same piano that we had in our garage on J Street for a period of time.
And it was, huh?
I don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Oh.
Did Aunt Jean take the
It
piano?
was an Emerson.
Well, when did Aunt Jean take the piano? When you moved out of that house?
I suppose.
I think she's had it all along.
Okay.
That was a different...
Yeah.
That other piano was... I'm trying to think.
And see, Einar had played in the band in Norway. Some kind of a band instrument. And he could chord on the piano.
Oh.
Really do some good chording.
Mhm.
All we had to do was just sing a song half a dozen times and pretty soon he had it. But we had all kinds of concerts around there. That time Margaret took us up to Grand Forks to see Aunt Mary. And John, I wonder if it was when Don was with her. No, couldn't have been, because he wasn't there too long. I think she thought she was going to get to adopt him. I really do. She even started a bank account for him, Brown Brothers, and that went broke. Yep. So he didn't have much in there, but anyway, he didn't get all of it back. Got some. Yeah, everything was for Don. She bought him a toy for $25, and nobody was to look at it except, nobody was to even go near it excepting just Don.
Wow.
Yep. So I couldn't get him back home fast enough.
That kind of sounds like
You see,
somebody else I know.
Yeah, with Anne, I had trouble because I had a breast infection and I couldn't nurse her. And so she did pretty well on Melon's food. Then when Don had the same thing, a breast infection, and we started him on Melon's food. I didn't agree with him at all. And I was getting desperate because there was a Norwegian doctor in town, and they lived about where the Indian is now.
Yeah.
There's that little street, you know. There's a bunch of Norwegians living on that street. And this doctor moved to California and took half a dozen families with him. And that was right after he delivered Don, but this was right afterward. So Dr. Pittenger had arrived on the scene. And I was getting kind of desperate, and I said, I'm going to take him down. He was going to have a kind of a clinic or open house or some darn thing. Mother, this child should be under the care of a doctor. I said, why do you think I brought him to you? We were friends from then on. Yeah. Old Doc Pitt, he wasn't too bad. Anne went visiting, no. Who was it? Yeah, it was Anne. When visiting at school, just before the end of the school year,
Mm-hmm.
before she was going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And she got scarlet fever. There was only one other case in town that he knew of. And he came over and he said, Mother, that's scarlet fever. He said, now I'm not strong for any of these new medicines, but I had one other case and it worked beautifully. I'll come over and give her a shot tonight if you want me to. So we said, go ahead. And her throat was so sore she couldn't hardly swallow anything. But the next morning she was wanting toast. I thought, well, gosh, if she can swallow toast, it can't kill her, that's for sure. So she had toast. Then I called him and told him. And she only peeled one big toe. Was all that ever showed that she had scarlet fever.
Was it penicillin that he gave her?
I don't think so. This was before the time of penicillin, I'm sure. No, it was
I wonder
something
what
that...
it was.
I don't know. I don't know. And that was the child that belonged to one of the teachers down at the Normal, way down there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only case he ever, the only case in town, really. So then, when school started, it was, I don't know what order, measles, whooping cough, chicken pox, what else could you? There was a sign off and a sign back on, continuously the whole winter through.
For quarantine, you mean?
Yeah, quarantine for everything then. Those people going to St. Mary's used to feel so sorry for us.
Well, when your house is under quarantine, can
They
anybody
had to move out.
Everybody else had to move out
They
except
had
just...
to move out, yeah. John was at our house, and John and Einer had to move out. They had to have their clothes all fumigated, and we had to hang everything back out on the line before they came back in and all that sort of thing.
And this was Aunt Ann that had all this junk? Was it Aunt Ann that had all of those diseases
Yeah.
that year?
Yeah.
Well, then you had a whole bunch of babies.
Well, sure.
So they all had to stay there.
No, wait, Jean wasn't, I don't think Jean was born.
No, she would have been the baby.
Uh-huh.
She would have had Don and Mom.
Yes. Yep, that was...
So you had to stay with, I mean, those two babies had to stay there? They were exposed to that, or did you have to farm them out too when you were under quarantine?
No, they all stayed at home.
They stayed there.
Yeah. They had everything as it came along.
Well, that happened to me and Russ. I was in 4th grade, Russ was in 7th. And I'd get it and then he'd get it and then
Yeah.
I'd get the next thing and he'd get, yeah, we did that one winter.
So how's the new mama doing?
Well, let's finish this up and then we'll turn off the tape.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do anything differently.
I don't think so.
Well, I was going to say, according to our class and some statistics that Dr. Ozaki has given us, your generation is pretty satisfied,
Yeah.
for the most part, with
Yeah.
their life. Okay, Brian, is there anything that you wanted on here that...
You can have another one of those if you want. I just soon get rid of the dumb things. I never drink it. I just don't like beer. I have taken a sip once or twice, but I don't care for it.
Well, I might have another one.
I had a girlfriend, Claire, whose father had a saloon just 2 blocks from the school, and it was a little out of my way, but it was on her way home. And we'd go to the back door of the saloon, and there was a barrel of pretzels out in the back there. When the pretzel barrel got kind of low, we pretty near stood on our heads to reach them. But it was pretzels, it wasn't beer. Julia Runge, now she liked beer. Her mother drank lots of beer and showed its big fat.
During Prohibition, did you guys get involved in any bathtub gin or anything like that? That would have been during the...
I don't know if they made beer or not. I just can't remember. But I'll tell you what I did when I was out in Butte.
Mm-hmm.
It was a store, a liquor place that went dry out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a bottle of wine and a bottle of liquor.
Mm-hmm.
And I mailed it home for Christmas.
Oh, isn't that against the law?
Sure it was. I was not too concerned about it, really. It didn't really bother me. But I'm sure I knew it. But they got it, and they were really surprised.
Out in Butte, did the three of you live together? Did you share? Did the three of you live together out in Butte?
No. Bertha moved on before too long. She wasn't there long after I was out there. She took care of some miner that we got to know pretty well. That was during the flu epidemic. And all these big, heavy-chested fellows, or people, were the ones that had it the worst. And you know what they used, what one nurse out there used? Onion poultices, and pulled every one of her people through. That was a good old-fashioned remedy. And they were dying like flies. We had one lady that came out on the train one time when I did there. She was coming back from New York and going to the coast, and she got sick there and had to be taken off the train. She died. Her niece, I think it was, came. I think there were about 3 people in that family that died from, you know. That was horrible stuff.
But you and Aunt Margaret and Aunt Bertha didn't?
I had it.
Oh, you did?
And the doctor came once and he said I can't come again. But I wasn't that sick.
Why did he say he couldn't come again? For fear of spreading it?
Yeah.
Contracting it himself?
Yeah. They were mostly just taken to the hospital, you see, right away. But I stayed in the hotel room.
One of your other jobs in Aberdeen, didn't you work at St. Luke's on the switchboard?
Not at the switchboard, no.
Okay.
I worked in the office, if you please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I went to work at, what time, in the afternoon, and I worked till 10 o'clock at night. And I had to admit people, you know, and I had the job of doling out pills.
You're kidding.
Yeah, right. They came down from all the different floors, and I want this many fourth of morphine, this many is scopolamine, and I can't remember half of them now. They had one brand new one, which was in a little tiny bottle, about so big. That was brand new at that time. And of course, you know, wherever they dole out pills, there's a shortage when they come to check them, check on them, and they had to check on them. they had to account for every single pill. And they would like to shove it onto somebody, you know. But the guy that was doing the inspecting said, no, you look for some nurse or some doctor that's getting away with some of these. Yeah, that was quite an experience.
Do you remember when that was?
It was when you were born.
Oh, so that would have been in 48.
Because I wanted to go out, I wanted to take a vacation, and one of the sisters put up a big howl. So they said I couldn't take it, so I went anyway, and I quit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you came out there when I was born?
Yeah.
Oh, well, when we shut this up, I want to ask you some things. Were you there when I was born, or did you get there later?
No, but right afterwards. Yeah.
Because I never clarified that with Mom. I've heard two versions.
Geez, someplace I've got a little bit written up about that trip.
Oh, really?
Yep. I'll see if I can find it.
So that was...
She had to get Mrs. Traven to go come down and meet me, I think. And the next day, your father was, whether he had an accident, a car accident anyway. And I can't remember today. But yeah, I've got some of those things written up somewhere.
Well, we're going to terminate this conversation now, Grandma, and I appreciate you.
We didn't get all the...
Well, I got everything I need for Dr. Razaki.
I also have a little plaque for my years with the board out here, because I was head of the board for a year or two here. Yeah. And yes, and I have that.
Didn't you
Ambassador of Goodwill.
Did you travel to Denver when you were on the board? Did you have to go out there? Or was that, you went with...
No, I went by train
Yeah, did you have to go to Denver when you were on the board?
When what?
When you were on the board, when you were on the High
Yes, I did.
Commission, you went to Denver, yeah.
Yeah, one of our very first meetings was meeting and deciding on some things.
You made some crucial decisions with regard to this place, like whether to have carpeting in the units or have air conditioning in the units.
Yep.
And you chose carpeting.
I think so. But then they talked about leaving a space underneath the windows here where they could install air conditioning. That, I guess, was not done. Whether it was decided to do it or not, I'm not real sure, but there was talk about it. Well, there wasn't that much air conditioning for one thing at that time. And
but if I remember correctly, your logic for carpeting made a lot of sense.
well, I'm not so sure.
You're second guessing yourself.
They had some kind of poor carpeting for one thing. Now this has been scrubbed once. That's all.
In 14 years?
Yeah, scrubbed.
Wow. Of course, you're an exception, Grandma. You are an exception.
No, I'm not.
Well, I think so.
No, I'm not any more exception than any of them. But there's some of it, that, especially this gold carpeting, it seemed like after you scrubbed it, the black stuff came, back. There's a sample of it that you got your feet on. Now see, the back of it is black.
Okay.
Let's rub it back.
But Julie was in here one day and I said, well then, mine doesn't look too bad, does it? She said, it's the best looking one of the gold in the house. But now this one, it wasn't, you can see that that's dirty in there now. And it really should be scrubbed. I may have it done if I am able to stay here.
Why would you maybe not be able to stay here?
I'm not going to be able to see very much anymore, you know.
No, I guess I didn't.
There's nothing they can do for this eye. And the other one is, I can't see anything out of this eye at all, really.
And they won't let you stay if you're blind? Or you wouldn't want to stay?
I don't know if I could if I would
By
be
whose-
able to.
By whose choice? Theirs or yours?
Well, as much mine.
I mean, they don't have a rule that says,
I don't know that they do. I don't think we haven't ever had we've got one that sits out there all day and yammers because she can't see. But she can find her way around all right. Of course, they have one fellow down at Bethesda. I don't know what was wrong with his eyes, but he got so that he couldn't see very well. But you could lead him to the out of the big room there where we gathered, down the hall, and then he could see the light at the end of this hall going this way, you see, and find his way from there. But now he is entirely blind. The last I heard anyway. Now this is caused from a drip onto the retina. Wet macular degeneration of the retina. It comes from a drip. And sometimes it's blood, they say, but this isn't blood, it's just,
where's it coming from?
but there's nothing they can do about it.
But where does it come from?
It comes from the blood vessels, way at the back of the, back of the eye. Yep. And it's getting so every day I can, not every day, but not very far between when I can notice the difference in what I'm seeing with this eye too. Yeah. I have a hard time writing my checks right now. Of course, Jean's name is on there, so she can take over whenever that comes.
Well, you want to shut it off? Thanks, Grandma.
You're entirely welcome.
The girl suddenly disappears. He
Times anyway.